Hi, I'm Marissa Bloom, and this is my informative speech on The Bite of the Mango. So, my book review and summary. To summarize, Maria 2 is an 11-year-old girl that is born in Yaoundé, Sierra Leone, and grows up in the village of Magboro. Her spoken language was Temne. She wore a docket and lapa, which is a two-piece African outfit made from cotton. She was born in a hospital, which is very uncommon because her mother frequently smoked cigarettes, requiring her to have medicine to fix her eyes, otherwise she would have been blind. She grew up living with her aunt and uncle, which was common to grow up with relatives other than your own parents. Her father was frequently in and out of jail, which was a cage with wooden bars in the middle of the village so everyone could peer in at the criminal. Kids didn't go to school, women cooked together, men fixed the houses, and kids played in and helped in the fields by planting and harvesting. It was common for men to have two wives, but this created jealousy and envy. Children were taught to respect their elders, otherwise physical discipline with a whipping stick may occur. Her people prayed to Allah with the Quran and practiced Muslim. Her people, though, did believe in a lot of superstitions and signs. And she was around 11 to 12 years old when the Sierra Leone War and the rebels of the war came and took over her village. Rebels included women as well, and they would lure people in by acting hurt and then attack villages. They spoke Creole. They would machete, kill pregnant women, children, burn down houses, and they attacked Maria too and cut off both of her arms, which later she would come across some of her family members who also had the same fate, though she did watch a lot of her family members get murdered right in front of her. Eventually she gets help. She does find out at 12 years old that she is pregnant, and she didn't even know what sex was at the time. Her son died before he was 1 year old, and then eventually she travels to Canada where she receives medical care, education, and support, rebuilding her life and navigating a new culture while processing the trauma of her past. I would definitely recommend this book. It gave me a whole new perspective on other cultures, values, beliefs, and experiences and what their typical day looks like. And I self-reflected a lot reading this book as I became aware of my own stereotypical beliefs. And I found my jaw dropping through the whole thing because I was just shocked what Maria 2 had experienced and kind of how she rebuilt her life. And she was in constant panic and fear, and I was more able to understand her different intersectionalities and how they impacted her and her community. So I'm not going to read all of her social identity intersections, but you can see here what kind of social identities Maria 2 had, what power, privileges, or marginalizations were afforded to the intersection. So Maria 2's experience are shaped by overlapping identities of gender, age, rural poverty, disability, culture, and refugee status. Each intersection creates specific forms of marginalization while granting certain privileges only after she relocates to Canada. So her experiences are shaped by gender powered, where men control women, age power, adults control children, political power, rebels control civilians, economic power, where wealthy nations control global narratives, cultural power of communities control shame and silence, media power, where Western platforms control visibility, and how people only came across her story once she was in Canada. Her story demonstrates how intersectionality magnifies vulnerability, but also how new intersections can introduce new forms of privilege and new challenges. These are my social media influencers research. So the first one is Nico Sinathi Innocent, known as DJ Black Coffee. He was born in Durban, South Africa, and later moved to Eastern Cape, which was near the home of Nelson Mandela Kunu village after his parents separated. He was raised by his mother and grandmother and grew up in poverty. And on the day of Nelson Mandela's release, a car with headlights off, rammed through a crowd, hitting people, including Nico Sanathi, resulting in him losing the use of his left arm. He was 14 at that time, and since then he majored in jazz studies and is now famous and one of Africa's wealthiest record producers and songwriters. He focuses on capabilities rather than limitations. And then Victor Ocean was born in Lira District, northern Uganda, and grew up in a war zone where the Lord's Resistance Army, LRA, rebels carried out violent abductions, burned homes, forced child soldier recruitment, and widespread atrocities, including rape, mutilation, and gunshot injuries against civilians. He is now a Ugandan peace advocate and human rights leader, and just at 13 years old founded a peace club in camps leading to an anti-soldier recruitment campaign. His own brother was forced to be recruited as a child soldier. Victor lived in an internally displaced persons camp for 21 years, surviving on one meal a day for many of those years. Children had to dig roots and herbs for washing clothes. Camps were overcrowded and limited resources. Many suffered from malnutrition, malaria, and epidemic outbreaks. Education was scarce, and he also hid in the bush in constant fear of the rebels, very similar to Maria Two's story. So this is my research article. To summarize, the article examines how Black adolescent girls experience a unique form of multi-layered oppression in digital spaces rooted in both racist and sexist stereotypes. This phenomenon, called digital anti-Black girlhood, shows up through harmful posts, comments, and direct messages from peers, adults, and strangers. These interactions negatively affect Black girls' well-being, self-esteem, and self-perception, revealing how online environments can reinforce gendered racism. This article defined anti-Black girlhood as multi-layered oppression rooted in racism and sexist stereotypes targeting Black girls. This article directly supports Maria Two's intersections because Maria Two is harmed not only because she is in a war zone, but she's a poor girl that is socially powerless. Girls are targeted for sexual violence, exploitation, and mutilation. The article supports that Black girls face compounded oppression and, like the book, both show that power structures weaponize gender, race, and age to silence and control girls. The article explains how anti-Black girlhood shapes young female self-perception, wellness, and self-esteem through hostile messages, texts, and comments on digital platforms and stereotypes. This mirrors Maria Two's experience by her internalizing shame and silence after her sexual assault and her mutilation. Her community stigma around sexual violence marginalizes her further, and her trauma is shaped by social narratives about girlhood, purity, and worth. The article reinforces how social narratives and stereotypes marginalize Black girls. Power imbalances and who controls narratives. The article notes Black girls' experiences online by post comments and messages from peers, adults, and strangers, often reinforcing racist and sexist power dynamics. The directly connects to the book because Maria Two's story gains global attention only after she reaches Canada, shows that Western media holds narrative power. Her trauma becomes visible only when filtered through Western institutions, journalists, and aid organizations. Her identity is shaped by others' interpretation, similarly to the article where Black girls online are shaped by outsiders. The article argues that gendered racism must be studied intersectionally because Black girls experience oppression differently than Black boys and white girls. Maria Two does not just experience war violence, but also gendered, racialized, economic, and politically. Her recovery is uniquely difficult. And lastly, implications for healing and support. Online spaces often reproduce harmful stereotypes about Black girls. Maria Two, when searched online, is often framed through Western trauma narratives rather than her own voice. Digital visibility is shaped by privilege, whose stories get amplified, and those who get flattened or ignored. And this is my resource slide. Thank you.